Hey y'all, welcome to Most of It, where I talk about most things that I find interesting. The Chaos Gods are powerful entities, far beyond human comprehension in both motive and power. But which one is best to follow? Well, don't you fear, because I'm here to answer that question for you today. Here, we will be covering the pros and cons of worship of each specific god and discussing which you, the eager Chaos neophyte, should choose, as I believe you're allowed to be picky when selling your soul. So without further ado, let's get into this. First on the list is Khorne, the Blood God. Currently in the setting, Khorne is the most powerful god, which makes sense. A galaxy that knows nothing but war will obviously greatly empower the Blood God. But blood is only one facet of Khorne. He is also the god of strength, honor, hatred, and rage, so exhibiting these qualities will draw his eyes. One interesting thing about Khorne is he doesn't need you to be the strongest being in the setting to earn his gifts, but you do have to prove you're operating at the peak of your own personal strength, as Khorne respects strength. Unlike the other gods, he also has some degree of honor, meaning that killing in weak or cowardly ways won't impress him unless it's on a massive scale. Like killing a town of innocents and civilians, Khorne doesn't really notice you. But if you kill a planet of innocents and civilians, oh man, that took some strength and dedication. He'll probably give you a pat on the back for that. Khorne's honor also means he won't backstab you like the other gods might, so once you're in with Khorne, unless you do something weak, you're in for life. But what is Khorne worship actually like? Well, once you gain the Blood God's favor, you can expect larger, roided out muscles enhancing your strength and speed, and if you get real deep in his service, you can expect a few horns or claws to start growing out of you as well. Pretty much anything that makes you a more dangerous physical threat, Khorne will give you. Khorne also views sorcery as cowardly, so you can expect some resistance to psychic attacks as well. And as a result of that, you are least likely to just start mutating into a chaos spawn when following Khorne. In fact, in an alternate 40K timeline, it was a demon of Khorne that destroyed the Emperor and the Golden Throne due to his anti-psyker powers. Also, with Khorne being the god of war, he's very unlikely to ever lose power, considering the name of the setting is Warhammer, making him a very stable god in terms of power levels. Well, most of it, you may be saying. Khorne worship sounds pretty solid. Why doesn't everyone just follow this guy? Well, now we get to the cons of Khorne worship. Look over here for me if you would. Do these fine gentlemen look very stable to you? Well, that's because they're not. Worship of Khorne comes with a side of what's called bloodthirst. What's that, you ask? Well, as you go further and further into your worship, you may begin to develop something akin to Tourette's. Except rather than shouting random words or clicking, you'll kill someone, with your mind slowly becoming addicted to the act of killing. Khorne warships are known for taking prisoners just so they have something to kill between battlefields. Over time, this thirst will degrade your mind and you'll become a mindless, albeit very strong murder machine. Like Khorne, he's a perfect example of this. Before falling into Khorne worship, he was actually one of the wisest and calmest world eaters, even being friends with a word bearer named Tal. And even when he got the butcher's nails put in his head, he remained most of the time something of a warrior poet. Granted, this was the world eaters, but you know what I'm trying to get at. But now he has lost himself in his slaughter, with only one example I can think of where he actually remembers who he used to be. But you know, you gotta take the good with the bad sometimes. Next is Tzeentch. Tzeentch is by far the most eldritch and unknowable of the gods, and thus he is, I'd say, the hardest to gain favor with. Tzeentch is the god of sorcery, knowledge, lies, trickery, and change. So if you seek Tzeentch's favor, you may need to first have a thirst for knowledge, and unlike Khorne, be a sneaky little weasel to acquire it. But once you have his sights on you, it will either be awesome or horrible, often depending on the day. Tzeentch has no honor, meaning that on a good side, you'll be blessed with arcane abilities and knowledge beyond what you could ever acquire on your own, as you learn to unravel the universe's mysteries until Tzeentch decides it entertains him more to turn you into a chaos spawn, at which point he will do exactly that. There's a story where Tzeentch finds a mysterious hole called the Well of Eternity, and he begins throwing changers of ways into it with only one ever returning. Keep in mind that demons are essentially smaller bits of the Chaos God's essence, so him just tossing them in was essentially like throwing bits of himself into a big hole. If Tzeentch will do that to his demons, just imagine what he'll do to you when he's bored. However, Tzeentch does have some upsides, those being the aforementioned knowledge and powers, but also the fact that at one point Tzeentch was the strongest Chaos God, and was on the cusp of winning what they call the Great Game. Tzeentch has shown in the past that he has, I'd say, the most potential of the Chaos Gods, so if he ever rises again, you'll rise with him. Maybe. Or he'll turn you into a gibbering blob of flesh, and get a little chuckle out of you. Who knows? But one of Tzeentch's aspects is change, meaning progression, and that is one of the most alluring aspects of this god. Change is both good and bad, but in a galaxy as stagnant as Warhammer, a little change of any kind is often welcome. Up next is Slaanesh. Slaanesh is the god of pleasure, pain, excess, and perfection, and thus is pretty fun initially to gain favor with. If you have a love for the arts and fine food and drink, and seek to better yourself, you may gain Slaanesh's interest. You will be granted fine clothes and will be able to feel more than ever, with your pleasure receptor sensitivity being heightened. As you get deeper into Slaanesh worship, however, those things that once brought you joy now are boring to you, and you seek after another thing to satisfy you. You then move from the arts to weak drugs, just something to take the edge off of life. Then those fade away, and you move on to strong drugs, and in order to get those drugs, you may need to rob someone to do it. But then that wears off, and you move into the thrill of killing, and on until you found yourself at the door of Slaanesh's palace, ready to do whatever she asks of you just to get that next high. To me, Slaanesh is the god of addiction, with the Emperor's Children Legion being the best example of that fact. In the book Fulgrim, you see the path they walk down, and it's haunting. They were once the most elite of the legions, bearing the Emperor's Aquila upon their armor, and then slowly they seek more and more highs, until at the end of the book, you read about a musical in which the performers tear themselves and others apart on stage, and paintings made out of human fluids. This is the path of Slaanesh, a slow path down into the depths of depravity, from which you will never return until the only thing that brings you fleeting joy is the suffering of others. Slaanesh does employ more mutations than Khorne, but less than Tzeentch usually, with most of the alterations made to followers of Slaanesh being a result of body modification and drug use. Followers of Slaanesh are usually faster than the average person and hit like trucks. And Slaanesh is the youngest of the Chaos Gods as well, and hasn't really had the chance to show her potential, except for what's happening to the Eldar, and so I personally say that she's the weakest of the gods currently, at least until we get a better view of what she can do. Our last god is Nurgle, and Nurgle is, I'd say, the most unique god on this list, as outwardly, he seems like the worst option. Nurgle is the god of disease, decay, death, and rebirth, and so he is pretty simple to gain favor with. In fact, I'd say he's the only god that you can gain favor with accidentally, as if you're alive, you will one day die and rot, and Nurgle likes that. If you don't bathe and get sick often, you may gain favor with the Lord of Decay, and once you do, you will find yourself with horns sprouting from all over your body, and new blights and poxes gracing you. And if you're really lucky, you may even become the new hive of large rot flies. Your body will become home to new terrifying diseases as your guts fill with decay gases, and you become a bloated monstrosity. Now, you may be saying, wow, most of it, that sounds awful. Why would anyone choose to follow Nurgle? Well, I'll tell you why. Because you don't feel the pain of Nurgle's gifts, beyond maybe your initial infection. Instead, you feel the ecstasy of being welcomed into Nurgle's love, and so long as you maintain a connection to the warp, you will never be parted from it. Nurgle is often called the grandfather by his followers, because that's how he views them, as a loving grandfather would. But wait, what was it I said about maintaining a connection to the warp? What happens if you don't? Well, once you become cut off from the warp as a Nurgle follower, you will have all the blights and mutations rush into you, and you will for the first time feel the effects of all of them, with the pain often killing you instantly. So yeah, that's definitely a downside. But just maintain at least 6 feet of distance from your local psychic blank, and you'll be fine. Nurgle is definitely the most inevitable god, I'd say, because if the whole galaxy got together and said no more fighting, magic, or excessive pleasure, they could significantly weaken Khorne, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh. But Nurgle endures. So long as there is life in the galaxy, there will be disease and death, and thus there will always be Nurgle, making him, while not the most powerful god, at least currently, he is the one that will endure the longest, I believe. In the book Flight of the Eisenstein, you read of a Marine who was stabbed by a weapon of Nurgle, and as he lays in the Medicaid bay dying, he turns to Nurgle for a way out of his suffering. And I believe that is the best example of why some follow Nurgle. To be a part of something resembling a family in a galaxy as dark as 40K's is a big deal, even if you have to be heavily mutated to do it. So that's all the gods and what it's like to follow them. But what if I told you there was a secret 5th option that is probably preferable to all of these? Well, do I have a surprise for you? Meet Chaos Undivided. This is where you gain favor from all 4 gods equally, and essentially become shared property between them. Followers of Chaos Undivided include Abaddon the Despoiler and Lorgar and the Wordbearers. To gain the favor of all 4 gods is a large undertaking, though, and the main way to do it is to worship Chaos as a force rather than a specific entity, and view the 4 gods as a pantheon. Once you gain the favor of Chaos Undivided, you can expect some more generic Chaos mutations, like horns and fangs, but if you impress them enough, you will be granted the ability to lead all 4 gods' demons as a united force, regardless of any opposition to each other. Chaos Undivided gives you a level of autonomy that no other god alone does, and if any god tries to take you for themselves, the other three will beat them down, as they are infringing on shared property, giving you a degree of protection from many warp dangers. Chaos Undivided is, I'd say, the best choice, but I don't like it personally, just because it ruins the whole conversation of which god to follow, and just makes it kind of boring. But if you ask me which god I would choose, I would say Khorne, with Nurgle as a close second, and both Tzeentch and Slaanesh tied for last, as I just don't like their model. Here's the thing with Khorne. Odds are, if you're in 40k, you're gonna be fighting something, and so you might as well be getting something for doing it. The initial stages of Khorne worship are cool, and by the time the Bloodthirst takes over, your brain will probably be too mush for you to care. And if you impress Khorne enough and become a demon, I think his demons are really cool and have the coolest powers, so for me, it's Khorne all the way. But regardless of whatever god you favor, I think we can all agree that the Chaos Demon model range in general is one of the best. But what do you think? Which god are you choosing and why? Let me know down in the comments, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Let me know what topics or characters you'd like to see me cover next, and be sure to check out my community tab, where I'm running weekly Primarch battle brackets. And with all that said, I'll see y'all later.